why would we have ambassadors representing the state that do not understand clearly what their terms of reference are?
These are the cards that I have drawn, that I am the minister at this point in time. And for members of the public...
But you're also a servant of the people. The unions are not threatening to withdraw their labor, and neither are they threatening to shut the country down, as you did.
I think your summarization of my position is highly inaccurate, and may I dare say a bit inflammatory.
The strategy did not work the last time for you. So what would make this?
Well, you're assuming that we're doing the same strategy.
And welcome to the August 14th edition of the Bubb Report. Last week, Grenada's 2022 Carnival climaxed with massive street celebrations throughout the island. The Grenada Festival, which has now evolved to include a panoply of private fetes juxtaposed with national events, is getting mixed reviews. Spice Mass Chairman Ali Gill, for his part, believes that the festival was a massive success, owing to the short window of time that was needed to prepare for the event, while other cultural connoisseurs think that the festival is quickly losing its uniqueness, and even went far as to suggest that the festival was a massive failure. Events such as the Soca Monarch had one of the poorest turnouts in recent memory. The Juve celebrations in the town of St. George were also a shell of its former self, with poor participation from jab-jab revelers, in addition to late start times of both the Monday Night Mass event and Carnival Monday and Tuesday Parade of the Bands, respectively. The outer parishes, however, had different Spice Mass experiences, with organizers in St. David, St. Patrick, and St. Andrew reporting bumper successes for traditional Mass activities. Viewers and listeners of the Bubb Report also shared their experiences of Spice Mass 22.
Generally, my Spice Mass experience was good. I believe that was largely attributed to the fact that I was just happy to have Carnival again and the euphoric feeling that comes with participating in the various events. As for Spice Mass branded events, I attended Soca Monarch and made a special effort to go to support the art form at a time when many did not want to attend, owing to calls for better incentives for artists to participate. I was somewhat dismayed by the number of persons in attendance, but I believe the real nail in Soca Monarch's coffin was not the absence of the big names, because our artists share similar fan bases, but rather, I believe the real nail in Soca Monarch's coffin was the price to attend.
Spice Mass 2022, in my view, was one of the most unsuccessful in years. While I choose not to give a full synopsis of what transpired, I would like to pay close attention to the turnout at most, if not all, of the Spice Mass events. We had the Soca and Groovy preliminaries, semi-final, final, Calypso, Panorama, just to name a few. Because of my area of expertise, that being social media, I would like to speak on the effects of the live streaming versus being in the actual venue of these shows. Undoubtedly, COVID-19 has taught us that it is more convenient, comfortable, and cost-effective to fet in the comfort of our homes. Let's take the preliminaries for example. Spice Mass issued a cover charge of $15 per person to enter the venue, while they provided a live stream free of charge to people at home. While we understand that the preliminaries aren't usually well attended, if there's a charge, it should be across the board. Another example of how the virtual world is dominating our physical space. Flow was a main sponsor of Spice Mass 2022. They offer customers a package they could not refuse, $100 EC for all the events from semi-final to Panorama via cable. Again, who wouldn't prefer to sit at home with friends or neighbors and enjoy these shows at home. Free drinks, free food, absolutely no violence. Let's go to Soca Monarch, Fantastic Friday, one of the most highly anticipated and well-attended carnival shows, saw the worst turnout ever.
As an eternal optimist, I was happy and I made the best of most situations during the season. However, logistically, Spice Mass was not well executed. The national events was subpar, given that we were 2 years removed from Carnival, and I would assume that SMC would have had it that we were preparing for Spice Mass 2022. I would think that a lot of the mishaps that happened shouldn't have occurred. Granted, election may have taken some of the wind out of the celebrations themselves. However, we've been in planning, and it's a committee that has been in place for some time. So we would have expected that Spice Mass would come around and things would progress as normal when it comes to these events.
This week on our program, we assess the successes, failures, shortcomings, and opportunities Spice Mass 2022 presented to the national community. We discuss the way forward for the festival with a panel of cultural connoisseurs. Later on our program, we attempt to unpack and make sense of the alleged assault of Grenadian World Athletic Champion Anderson Peters and his brother Kidden. He is also a law enforcement officer. The video of the incident, which has since gone viral, has sparked outrage in Grenada, with calls for boycotts of foreign party vessels into the island around the carnival season. The video, however, only shows what transpired on the ship's ramp, without giving much context to what started the altercation in the first place. The crew of the Harbour Master, however, has been accused of maltreating patrons in the past, with one social media user complaining of violent treatment by the staff, especially against female patrons. For this program segment, we will sit with two maritime experts to discuss the incident from a maritime administration perspective. We welcome our guests, Ali Gill, Chairman of the Spice Mass Corporation of Grenada, Lazarus Joseph, Chief Pilot at the Grenada Ports Authority, Kareem Marcel, CEO of Good Music, Good Times Radio and disc jockey, Robert Ashley Steele, band leader of Summer Crew Grenada, Anselm Clouden, maritime attorney, and Dexter Mitchell, former CEO of the Grenada Cultural Foundation. We thank you for joining us. A pleasant good morning to our viewers and listeners, and we welcome you to this episode of the Bubb Report. This is, of course, our post-carnival conversation here on the program. Now, Grenada's cultural icon, the Black Wizard, sang "When the Carnival is Over" as a perennial reminder that we have to return to living our lives after weeks of frenzied partying and reveling. With Team No Sleep, allow the Bubb Report to make some observations about Spice Mass 2022. And of course, we will touch on the current firestorm surrounding the violent attack on Anderson Peters aboard the Harbour Master later in the program. First and foremost, it was good to be an eyewitness to history, to see Grenada's sitting Prime Minister play jab jab on the streets on Carnival Monday. This history-making feat ought not to surprise the critics, as Mr. Mitchell has been an avid mass player for years. The irony was not lost on me as a student of history that it was Deacon Mitchell's predecessor, the late Sir Eric Gairy, who attempted to criminalize and delegitimize the jab jab in the 70s with his unsuccessful attempt at banning the cultural expression, which backfired spectacularly. It was, however, quite surprising that some in the national community expressed umbrage at the fact that Deacon participated in an ultimate cultural expression. Grenada's jab jab is as Grenadian as oil down, and nutmeg. It is embedded in the bowels of our people with a rich and storied history that is linked to our African ancestral traditions. Deacon also comes from that tradition, as do other politicians, such as Dr. Clarice Modeste Kerwin, who is an avid shortney reveler. When politicians participate in cultural expressions that represent the country they're elected to serve, they are simply mirroring the fact that they too are products of the society. So, for those in Grenada's respectability politics class who have taken offense to a leader playing mass, should perhaps suggest what suitable straitjacket a leader should use for Juve morning so that he doesn't give the appearance of improper public conduct. On the issue of soca on the road, I make an appeal to the SMC to use whatever means necessary to ensure that our DJs play a combination of music that represents the country in which revelers are playing mass. If I am to go to Trinidad, as I do on occasion to participate in their carnival, I would hope to hear a healthy helping of Kess, Marshall, Voice, and others on the road. This is not to take away from the fact that Grenada's own soca artists are not featured in Trinidad, but it has to be proportional, and local music must rule the day on Carnival Monday and Tuesday. And finally, there will be lots of opportunities to dissect the outcome of Spice Mass 2022. But at the end of it all, our recommendations and suggestions can only work if people support the indigenous aspects of Carnival with the same zeal as they do the private shows and events that have now become a mainstay on the Carnival calendar. I continue to call for the development of a cultural studies curriculum that is taught from primary school all the way to the level of T.A. Marisha Community College so that the culture can live from generation to generation. Our cultural identity influences how we interpret and react to situations. So it is important that we become aware of our own identity in relation to the world around us. Since we have an innate craving to feel a sense of belonging to a group, when we are under stress, we tend to subconsciously revert to whatever behaviors make us feel safe and accepted. Carnival is one aspect of our cultural identity that must retain its uniqueness if it is to be sustainable and if it is to be successful. And at this time, I wish to welcome our first guest for this panel segment of the Bubb Report. We have Robert Ashley Steele of Summer Crew Grenada. Bobby Steele, we call him Bobby as well. We have Ambassador Ali Gill, Chairman Ali Gill, who is the chairman of the Spice Mass Corporation of Grenada. We have Mr. Dexter Mitchell, who is an ex-manager of the Grenada Carnival Committee, who also served on the Grenada Cultural Foundation. And we have Mr. Kareem Marcel, a past student of mine of the PBC, who is the proprietor of Good Music, Good Times Radio, and who is also a disc jockey. So, gentlemen, welcome to the Bubb Report.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, if we were to, and I want to begin with you, Chairman Gill, some have criticized the SMC for dropping the ball on a number of logistical issues which affected the outcome of Spice Mass 22. For example, issues with Panorama and the way the stage was constructed without ramps on either ends of the stage, the late start time of Fancy Mass on Monday and Tuesday, at least in the town of St. George, the quality of the Soca Monarch show, and other issues. Now, Chairman Gill, if you were to rate this year's carnival on a scale of 1 to 10, what grade would you give SMC stewardship of carnival this year?
Thank you, Kellan. Thanks for having me on the program once again. I'm never one to read from 1 to 10 because sometimes putting things in a figure sort of way it can miscue really a true analysis of what happened. But I would say that yes, there were weaknesses um, with regards to logistics in some areas, and just to say that we did contract a logistic team, to address some of these issues. Secondly, though, the Panorama stage was purpose built. The stage was purpose built for Panorama, and there were ramps on both sides of the stage. If I can recall, there were ramps on both sides um, of the stage. The stage is purpose built. In fact, that's one of the that's one of the issues we have with the Carnival stage every year, in the sense that we need to do it, especially for Pan. You can do the Wagati, the Judah, the Daridi, and so on. Can do a stage for Calypso and Soca. But once you are doing the Pan event, you must it must be purpose built in terms of not just the ramps, but also to carry the weight and so on. And we contracted an engineering firm to do that. So it was purpose built for Pan. So that's that. But I do concede that there was some logistic issues. The issues with the parade, um, the late timing of the parade is a perennial problem. This year, it got even a bit more difficult to manage in the sense that, for one, the Monday night mass, and Bobby can speak to that a little bit more. Um, we are using the same trucks that are doing the T-shirt segment of the fancy mass bands on Monday evening. They too are contracted to do the Monday night mass. And this year, for instance, the T-shirt segment, the Monday wear, as they call it, went up late, thus pushing back the the beginning of the Monday night mass. Also, too, we've had the unfortunate incident of someone falling down on a truck on Monday. Thank God, she is in much better health, and she is no longer in harm's way. But that again created a further delay in terms of the emergency response to get a medical attention and so on. Having said that, we need to continue to strategize on how we can start the Monday night mass on time. I agree. Also, to on the parade on Tuesday, the need for marshals, and we did made a plea for assistance with regards to the Royal Grenada Police Force to have at least a sergeant along with the marshals to ensure that the trucks moves on time, that the band moves on time, right? But you will appreciate even that provides some logistical problem, because as masqueraders, a lot of the times do not even turn up. They're not assembly at the time, even sometimes when the band requests them or demands them to do so. So there are a lot of little issues that needs ironing out, and we have to walk through them. We have to walk through them, and hopefully we can continue to walk through them, develop different strategies and so on to ensure that these issues do not continue to repeat itself.
How much of a factor, and I want to bring in both Dexter and Bobby here to get into this conversation here. Um, the foreign shows, the feds, if you will, excuse me, how much of a factor do you think that plays in affecting the start times of the events? For example, the White Show at the stadium on Sunday night, many folks said that they were really spent and tired. They didn't want to go to Juve after that. So, how much of a factor, Dexter? I would start with you first. Do you think that affected, and then I would go to Bobby and back to Chairman Gill, that affected participation of patrons on the street for Carnival Monday and Tuesday?
Thank you for having me, Dr. Bob.
Yes.
Specifically, I would not want to point a finger at any one specific event, but I would want to say that we need to determine what we are doing with the carnival product, and so we need to fashion a season that is a Grenadian season, so that when we sit, an SMC I suspect would sit with private promoters because they will have to make an application to the SMC to host those events. There should be a conversation and a determination as to what is going to happen. So, as you rightfully said, maybe the white show finishing at 6 o'clock, and the fact that it is a white show might have some effect on Juve. I know the argument is going to be made, but we used to have the March Gras in the heyday in the 80s and 90s, and then people went straight to Juve. But that is a different component. When you go to the Old Queen's Park and you're back in Ajamo or Inspector and they win or they did very well, you want to go straight into Juve to continue the celebration. But if you put on your white outfit and you go to a show, you have a good time, you are not looking to go straight into Juve. So maybe there is some considerations there. The fact that you had another one on Saturday night, how does that, the fact that you had two shows on the weekend, because Dr. Bob, we used to have two shows on Saturday. So patrons had Soca Monarch and then a choice of one of two shows on Saturday. Now you have Soca Monarch on Friday, then Saturday, then Sunday. So I think in 2022, Soca Monarch might have suffered a bit because of that. You have two other options on the weekend, and because you don't have the big guns in competition, patrons would easily say, you know what, I'm not going to spend the money on Soca Monarch, but I will do so on Saturday night and Sunday night. And especially when you had the marked increase in the cost to enter Soca Monarch.
Mm-hmm. And let me bring in Bobby. Any thoughts on the start times of the events and how that impacted what obtained on the road? I mean, I played Mass this year, and I would be frank, I was very disappointed that our band did not get the opportunity to parade on the Carnage, because there is something special about parading on the Carnage with that setting sun hitting your costume and the impact that has on the gold sequence that you're wearing and things like that. So I really missed that opportunity. But Bobby, let's hear your thoughts.
Well, I think what Dexter, first of all, thank you for having me on the program, Doc. I do want to say that, Dexter spoke right there. Dexter's pretty much hit it on point. We also have to take into consideration something, right? People will say, when I started in this thing, from my point of view, right? When I started, I was seen like an outside influence coming into the carnival. Even though I'm born-bred Grenadian, I was seen like that. I was perceived to be trying to change what was happening here. Even though I tried very hard to work within what we wanted to do. I can tell you, this carnival was probably the most disappointing to me, to see all the hard work that we have done over the years. All of us who have spent many, many years trying to make this carnival become so special in terms of a Grenadian. We were proud. I don't feel any proud. I don't feel proud anymore of what I saw this carnival. And I don't want to blame anybody in particular. I just think Grenadians themselves, all of us collectively, have to decide what we want, because none of what took place could take place if we were more nationalistic, if we were more, how to put it, believed in our product, we wouldn't. Could any of us here today, right, who are in the culture thing, could any of us ever imagine a show on Carnival Sunday night in Trinidad and Tobago, where the featured act on that show was Mr. Killer, the featured act, or Westways, or anybody, and that we would all Trinidadians would go to support that show in sacrifice of their Juve product or their Demas product? Can we envision that? We can't, because the Trinidadian would be proud. They would not do it. It doesn't matter how big the song is. Trinidad would stand up bigger. And I love Kes. And a lot of people don't know this, but I was actually the first person to ever bring Kes to Grenada, right? And I would say to you that there's no way, it didn't matter which promoter did it, there's no way that I could find myself on Carnival Sunday night, whether or not I'm doing an event, whether or not I'm going to an event that would have a featured act from outside of Grenada. It's not possible. It's just not possible. And I think it speaks to us as Grenadians. Our carnival cannot change from what we were building it in if we all as Grenadians were more nationally proud of what we have, right? It doesn't mean we can't have other entertainers in, right? But we need to change our perception of what we want for ourselves if we are going to solve the problem. We can't put the blame down on SMC alone, even though that I would say SMC, in my opinion of listening to when it was formed, was there to protect our culture, to promote, protect, and build, right? And so in that light, I would say yes, some blame has to fall on the level of all of our cultural leaders, because they have to lead us by example. They have to lead by example.
Bobby, the
Yes.
argument that the SMC would make, that Chairman Gill, I'm going to bring him back here, is that the SMC is a compendulum, it's a panoply of the stakeholders and the mass. So in essence, you are criticizing yourself as well.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I'm criticizing all of us. I'm not pointing blame at any one individual. I'm not pointing blame at the promoter who did the show on Sunday night. I'm not pointing blame at any one individual. I'm saying the blame starts with all of us as Grenadians. Every single one of us has to make up our mind. What do we want? What it is that we want inside of here. If we just want a big music festival and anybody just come and play, and whoever is the best song that year, we're going out and that's what we want to do. If that's what we want, then I think we're heading in the right direction. If we are, on the other hand, trying to become that unique carnival that people every single year since I got involved was building and building and building, right? If that is what we want, us to have our own unique experiences at Carnival, I think we are damaging it, and I don't know if we can ever get it back. I don't, right? And that's just my opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Chairman Gill, a very damning assessment there from both Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Steele with respect to the outcome of SMC. What, not SMC, Carnival 2022. What say you?
No, just I don't think it's a damning assessment at all. I think in some areas I agree that we need to do things differently. And two things. One that you pointed out with regards to you were disappointed in your band not going on the Carnage. Your band requested not to go on the Carnage. And also to what we've had is that we have a 14 registered bands. So this year we've had probably the biggest fancy mass band parade in our recent history, right? So that when you speak of the weaknesses, this is one of our strengths that can also create different challenges. So we had 14 registered fancy mass bands, and all of these bands had trailer trucks. The fact of the matter is that all these trailer trucks cannot go on the Carnage because of our roadway. In other words, the Carnage is a cul-de-sac. They cannot turn on the Carnage. So that up to Carnival Saturday, we were meeting with the police high command with regards to devising strategies as to see which bands can go onto the Carnage and which cannot, because of the amount of trailer trucks and the length of trailer trucks. You have trailer trucks 60, 70 feet and so on. And it simply could not, logistically, it simply could not go on the Carnage. So that what that speaks to is, for instance, how do we go forward in terms of revising the route for the parade on Tuesday or even the Monday night parade, because most of these trailer trucks, or quite a few of these trailer trucks, also do the Monday night mass bands. And persons may even suggest that we need to look at maybe starting on the Carnage and going Grana's direction because of the whole evolution of the carnival. Now, the other thing is that we must be mindful when we speak about foreigners and foreign. And that's the other issue with regards that I spoke on a program with regards to the issue of Grenada's CSME obligation. Now, just as though you have the Trinidadians investing in banks and insurance companies here in Grenada, so too they are investing in the creative industry and in carnival, and they involved in the carnival product, not just in Grenada, but throughout the region. So this, what we are discussing here, is not uniquely Grenadian, because you find that the Trinidadians are all over the Caribbean, in Barbados, in St. Lucia, and so on. They're investing heavily in the carnival product. So that is something we have to look at. But getting back to what Bobby said too, which is absolutely critical, and I mentioned it on the Calistros program, I think on Friday, is the consciousness of Grenadians. Everybody say we are the Trinis coming, the Feds are coming, and so on, and we're not uniquely Grenadian, but we're not supporting our own. When the Grenadian artists are putting on their own fets and so on, do we go and do we support them? Do we support our local promoters and so on? Do our local promoters feature or use Grenadian artists as headline acts and so on? So it boils down to a certain respect, our own consciousness of how we do things. And that is critical. Because while you may speak about the foreign influences and so on, now when we speak of globalization, generally as a society, also too, that is impacting our carnivals and our culture. Now, you spoke earlier on with regards to the protection and promotion of Grenada's authentic culture. This year, the SMC has invested heavily in Shortney, VECO. We partnered as well with the Lions Club with regards to Old Mass to give it some sort of incentive and give it some strength going forward. We had the traditional mass parade in Victoria, which is critical in terms of giving the traditional mass that particular space and so on. Also, too, we streamlined the Calypso tents. So in past years, in 2019, for instance, there were 8 or 9 Calypso tents. And all of these tents was doing one show, which was basically Georgian night. This year, we've been able to have 2 Calypso tents doing multiple shows. And even a show after Georgian ended, which I think was excellent. So this again is a strong feature, right? The Calypso finals, they move from the Sunday to the Thursday. I mean, the critics are still out, but I think everyone will agree that the Calypso finals on a Thursday was a success, right? The Queen show.
I don't think people had an issue with, because it was a success in terms of
people still have an issue,
but I believe
Kellen.
Well, yeah, they do, but I think well, no, but if I may, I think people are okay with Calypso finals in St. Andrew, because people in the rural communities tend to support Calypso more. But I believe what people have an issue with is the fact that it was on a Thursday and not on a Sunday, that perhaps it should be kept on a Sunday as a demasquerade show, as we know.
And that's an issue that is debatable. But I also say to you that if you look at a lot of the carnivals right now in the region, look to see how many of the carnivals still keep the Calypso finals on a Sunday. The carnivals are evolving. That is a fact. Take, for instance, St. Lucia. I'm not saying that we have to go the route of St. Lucia or go the route of any other island, but I'm just saying that we must be observant of the trends that are taking place with regards to the evolution of carnival regionally, right? But on Sundays, we've had Calypso finals for years in the National Stadium, and we had sparse crowds, right? But I'm just making the point that the Thursday, it was a success in Progress Park. I mean, you can always have a bit of analysis as to what, but it was a success. The Queen show moved a week earlier. The Queen show was sold out and so on. So that, again, we need to look at, but I think the Queen show was a success. The Soca Monarch, and Mr. Mitchell had analyzed, he pointed out 2 factors, and I'm certain that he did not do a full analysis, and I'm certain that he can say a lot more with regards to the Soca Monarch. But yes, the Soca Monarch crowd was disappointing. But a couple of things. One, this is the biggest space that we've had for the Soca Monarch. We moved back the stage further, and we enlarged the size even after the pre-show on the Wednesday night, anticipating a big crowd, so that you'll see a much bigger space. I agree that one, there was the impact of the fact that quite a lot of our 10 soca artists who would normally vie for a place in the Soca Monarch finals didn't participate. Secondly, I believe that the late releases of the soca songs sort of kill the vibes as well, because as I say to Tara, the first time I heard Today was in the Soca Monarch semifinals, for instance. And of course, you would have had quite a lot of fetes on the Saturday, on the Sunday, all week. And not to mention a lot of the party boat cruises, even on Soca Monarch on Sunday, which would have drained not just resources, but drained the energy of partygoers and so on. I hear the concern with regards to the price of the tickets, and maybe that's an issue we need to look at. But I will say to you that we had the combo tickets, which did not do as well as we thought it would, where persons could have paid $200 for 3 shows, right? Which was a steal. Then we also would have had the early bird tickets and the prices of the tickets would have increased as you get closer to the event. And I dare to say that persons, maybe we have a culture of last-minute vibes as well, but persons did not make use of the deals that were on offer all year clock in purchasing tickets for the events, in particular the Soca Monarch. But
Okay,
as I said, it's
yeah,
an issue. If the price of ticket is an issue, it's something that we need to look at and we need to revisit. But in the same breath, when persons make a plea for $100,000 in prize monies, and then we still don't have we cannot generate enough revenue at the gates, then it raises an issue. On Friday, SMC paid out over $800,000 in prize monies across the board. And $800,000 is the subvention of Carnival from central government to Carnival, $800,000. And we paid out over $800,000 in just prize monies. So,
okay. So,
you know,
Chairman Gill, stick a pin. Yeah, stick a pin. I want to bring back Dexter here and Bobby. Chairman Gill is saying that the Carnival is evolving. And so when we think about the cultural product, we have to think about it in that context. We also have to think about it in the context of globalization and what is happening. So I want to get your thoughts. Dexter, I would start with you and Robert. And then we would get to Kareem Marcel. Kareem is waiting in the wind here. He's a DJ. And of course, DJs have come in for some heavy criticism in this carnival cycle. So we will get to you shortly. You are here, by the way, in your private capacity. You're not representing any DJ organizations. You're not representing any DJ interests. So I just want to make that very clear. But Dexter, let me get to you.
Yeah, I do agree. And I agree with Bobby. And Bobby and I have had some battles as a former manager of Carnival. Not that we did not like each other, because of our passion for what we thought Carnival should be. And we share the same vision that it should be about Grenada. And I do agree that the world around us is evolving. Kellon, I remember when we, and I speak of the Carnival Committee in 2004, Mrs. Woodruff as the chair, we designed the Carnival season to extend it because we recognized it was getting very crowded. So the fact that you now have preliminaries at the beginning of July, all the competitions used to take place within 1 week of each other. So you had the preliminary stage, then the semi-final stage, and then the final. So I do agree that there has to be some design of the Carnival season. I hesitate to use the word control because we don't like the use of the word control, but our season has to be controlled. So whether we want to move the Calypso to Thursday or to Sunday, it should come out of a proper analysis, getting everyone involved. And not as though it appeared as though we kind of ended up with a show on Sunday, and patrons were kind of taken aback. Wait, why is Carnival on Thursday? Is it because there's a show on Sunday? So
you mean the Masquerade?
Yeah.
Okay,
and I think
the Calypso finals.
Kind of where the SMC is kind of coming in for some blows, in that there were 2 years of no Carnival, so you had enough time to sit, consult. Not much was happening, so you could have spoken to people via Zoom and so on, get ideas. But what we have to do, we have to tweak our season, design our season so that it reflects the authentic Grenadian experience. So that, yes, St. Lucia does what it does now. So when you go to St. Lucia, you get that St. Lucian experience. Whether the Calypso is on Friday night, I suspect that they would have done studies to determine why that works. If we can maintain as close to a traditional carnival as possible, it might be a selling point that people might say, you know what, I prefer to go to Grenada because on Sunday night you can get Calypso and then you can get Juve. Soca Monarch is on Friday, Panorama is on Saturday. And just to make a quick point, and I'll get back to the reference point, but Grenada's Panorama is the second largest panorama in terms of participation outside of Trinidad and Tobago. That is a selling point. And Pan Aficionado.
In terms of participation by Pan players, or in terms of participation by people who patronize the event?
Pan players and bands.
Okay.
So that could be a selling point for us. But my point is that I think we have to, especially coming out of 2022, we have to fashion and design an authentic Grenadian experience for Grenadians, and then extend the invitation to people to come in. Not allow people to determine, entrepreneurs, wherever they might be from, to determine what the shape of our carnival season should be like.
But the counter argument would be that you can't prevent an entrepreneur from coming to do business. I think, in my view, I mean, I'm not an expert on any of these things, but I do not know if block out keep periods are possible. So you say to these people who are coming in that you can have your event, but it has to be within that particular stipulated time in order to protect the indigenous aspects of culture. Maybe that's a thought, but Bobby, let me bring you in here. Chairman Gill is making the point again, as I said, that the carnival is evolving, that we are operating in a space where it's now very globalized. Your thoughts on that?
Well, let me go and look at this from two angles. First of all, we speak about investment, mention of the banks and businesses and stuff like that. Well, I always believe the thing of investment is you're pumping money in. You're investing to build, okay? So let's start with the build aspect first. A few years ago, a promoter from Trinidad came to me and said, Grenada should allow the Trinidadian feds in because it will enhance their carnival. It will enhance our carnival. So I said to that promoter, were you here the previous year? He said, no. I said, well, the previous year, every flight into Grenada was full for our carnival period. The airfares were reasonable. Every single hotel was operating at 80-90% occupancy, most full. Every guest house had no problem with people staying in their guest house, right? Every single person that came and visited our carnival was able to go in feds and enjoy the feds, and the band prices were reasonable for everybody to play, and there was enough space on the road for all the bands to participate and get through the route, right? So if you're coming in as a Trinidadian promoter, and I'm still going Trinidadian, let me say this clearly, that could be any promoter. I'm giving an example because my conversation was with a Trinidadian, right? Now, if you're coming in to enhance, you have to tell me, how is it enhancing our product? Is it that we needed more people to come to Grenada if we don't have the fares? Look what happened this time around. I'm not sure if you're aware, but many Grenadians could not come home for our carnival because the airfares were so high. You come in here and look at your parties and you said invest. Well, tell me, what is an investment if a person can bring a boat into Grenada, charge a rent for the boat, and then keep the bar on board the boat, and they don't belong in Grenada? So all that revenue then leaves after carnival and is gone. That revenue is not circulating within our economy here in Grenada. So
that revenue is now under arrest, but I digress. I say that in jest.
That is, you're speaking to what we might be called here, but most of it is already gone, right? So I'm saying to you, right, that we have to look at what do we deem as investment, right? Because that is where it starts. And again, I will come back and I will say this problem starts with our Grenadian mentality. And let's speak to the islands quickly to my end that point. Yes, there are laws and treaties, there's all of this that are signed, right? That it makes it harder to block periods because we all signed on to these things, right? But let me guarantee you that from somebody who spent a large portion of their life in Trinidad involved in the entertainment industry in Trinidad, you can bet your bottom dollar that if a Grenadian promoter was to come in, first of all, you have fire, you have ECHO, you have health, you have so many different organizations that you have to go through in order to put on an event. The frustration that they would have felt dealing with each of those bodies in order to put on that event, they would have never done it. They would never do it. The Trinidadians would have made the system because of their national pride. We have to get that. We have to build that inside ourselves. We have to say, you know what? Every Trinidad, and I talk to so many people over the carnival period, and many of the visitors that come in here, they came to our carnival because of the unique feel our carnival had, the way the Juve was, the way you can go and experience and party with everybody, the way the fets were also everybody came in. Now you have 9 and 10 parties and 8 of them basically with nobody inside. All of this happening and just diluted. We have, and the ones that's going, boat rides selling out in 1 hour and all that money on the outside, nothing sold here. We have to find a way. We have to find a way to say, you know what? If you're so interested in investing in our country, in our entertainment, come here at other times a year. And then let's factor in that we went 2 years. Every Grenadian promoter went 2 years with nothing. Nothing. We couldn't do anything. This was the carnival that SMC, this was the carnival that our cultural people should have found a way to say, you know what? This one is yours. This is your time to come back. This is your time to give Grenada a carnival that belongs and showcase us. Anybody who thought that this carnival showcased us, we are on a different planet. We are on a different planet altogether.
All right, so what we want to do at this point, panel, we will come back because we have to get to the next segment. As a reminder, the next segment, we would be unpacking what occurred on the Harbour Master, that is a Trinidadian party boat, and the incident that occurred there. And of course, that party boat has come in for some heavy and stern criticism based on what unfolded. So we have that segment coming up. But at this point, what we want to do is to take a quick break and get some more public reaction to Spice Mass 2022. So please stand by.
Good day, viewers. I am Kerry Williams, Public Relations Officer of the Virgin Parish Cultural Organization. Looking back at Carnival in St. David, I would say it was definitely a success. The organization hosted 2 events. The first on Carnival Sunday, Camberley. We had 2 centers, one at Derek Andrews' shop in Argyle and Windsor Forest, and the other at Sugar Hole in New Cane. At the centers, we had food to give out, we had drinks, music, traditional mass. We saw some jab came out, we had the lighting of the flambeau, we had maypole, we had a number of activities. The center in New Cane had a really large turnout, and we were really pleased with that, and people enjoyed themselves asking for it next year. So this was actually an activity that Spice Mass asked the different committees to put on. The second was the Juve on Carnival Tuesday. We started at Crowshoe, so the route was from Crowshoe to Pomrose Junction. The Juve, the turnout was massive. Up to this morning, there were vendors, messaging committee members saying thank you, letting us know that, they sold out all of their food. Some just had a few drinks remaining, and everybody enjoyed themselves. We had no signs of violence. We had nothing. As far as the committee knows, we have no reports. The Prime Minister came to the Juve, so we had a lot going on during that Juve. We had a massive turnout.
I must say that I do appreciate the fact that we brought back the Junior Soca Monarch competition, that they were activities geared towards children, and it was just not focused on the adults. However, I honestly think that the March Gras should go back to Sunday. It's traditional, and it allows for a smooth flow of whatever transpires on the Monday of Carnival. Because the white show at the stadium would have ended late, it meant that Juve started late, and everything following that ultimately was late as well.
My experience on the road, Monday and Tuesday, overall was a good experience, right, in the band that I played with, minus the fact that everyone was complaining about the music. Now, we pretty much have a long list of soca artists who produced really good tunes for 2022, and I was only hearing like about 5 or 6. Mind you, me, that 5 or 6 wasn't even playing that much compared to In the Water and these other music from outside of the Caribbean.
The events I attended leading up to Carnival Monday and Tuesday, particularly pre-day, increased my anticipation for the festivities. His entrance alone set me into motion. I felt spiritually connected to my ancestors by simply watching the many jabs drag their chains across the National Stadium stage while blowing their shells and lighting fire. The black silhouettes with horns represents more than fun. It represents the freedom that should always remain in our own hands. Juve morning is a day I patiently awaited. To come together and chip down the road to the sounds of iron, drums, Grenada soca, and more was exhilarating. I absolutely loved that our Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, was playing jab. It symbolizes unity, humility, courage, and strength. A Prime Minister that can stand with his people and participate in commonalities, especially ones that involve cultural enhancement, shows that we are in the hands of a leader that is not making himself smaller nor larger than any of us.
Thank you, viewers, and welcome back to the program. Now, as a reminder, the next segment of the Bubb Report comes to you compliments S.A. Johnson Funeral Home. It is a Caribbean family-owned funeral service. They offer a full range of funeral services at affordable prices in New York City and can be reached on 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity. And at this point, I wish to welcome Kareem again. Kareem, some of in the audience have been clamoring. They want to hear the DJ, so here you are. Kareem, and please unmute as we proceed. But as a DJ, why did it have to come to the point where the Spice Mass Corporation had to make appeal to DJs to play local music on the road? At some points, I felt I was on Arapita Avenue in Port of Spain playing Carnival in Trinidad, as I do sometimes, and not in Grenada. I came to Grenada to hear local music. What happened there?
So let me just state like that I'm here as a part of the panel, but a lot of what I'm going to say is third-party observations by myself, and a few of it is just feedback that I've gotten from people on the ground. So I was in no place, I think, capable of like making a concrete synopsis of what happened and why it was like that. I did reach out to a few DJs in Grenada to take.
Actually, both of us did, and everyone declined. I don't know what. Apparently, the DJs are warring. I don't know what's going on, but I thank you for appearing. Yeah.
So we definitely tried to get the local voice to come across, right, to give them a seat at the table. So I'm not here speaking as a professional to say I know everything. There are a few DJs. There was one DJ in particular that I reached out to who wanted to be here, but he wouldn't have been able to be where he felt like he had the connection to come and give his views. So with that said, let me just speak on the product of Grenada Carnival, right? We have, I think, what is the most unique carnival in the whole region, right? And Pandora's box has been opened. We can't put the lid back on what we had. Everybody knows about Grenada Carnival. This year was the first year that I saw a week before Carnivals, there wasn't even tickets available to purchase. Usually 2 days, 3 days before Carnival, I would go online, check to see what the tickets are. It would be probably $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. But 1 week before Carnival, there wasn't even seats available to book. So in terms of the demand and the exposure that Grenada Carnival has gotten, I think we have arrived as a preeminent destination for masqueraders who want something different. Now, I cannot speak about the whole, promoters and what's going on back and forth, But I know when people travel to Grenada, they want something different, right? They have probably been to London, they have been to Grenada. I mean, they have been to Trinidad, they have been to Miami, New York, Labor Day, and those things. And when they're coming to Grenada, it's because they feel like they want something a little bit more authentic. The promoters, the mass band leaders, I would lay a lot of blame on that side of the things because they know a lot of foreigners are coming in, and the ticket prices and what they're setting is pretty much at a price point that people that are coming in with the US dollar and wherever else they're coming from is going to be able to afford, right? I think the conventional thinking is if we have people from New York, then we probably need New York DJs, or we need DJs from Miami, or we need DJs that's international, so to speak, right? But that's not what people are coming for. They're coming for that authentic experience. They want to hear Grenada music. They want to feel like, you know, they're doing something different. And based on all the lives that I witnessed and watched, it felt no different than if I was in Miami or if I was in New York for Labor Day. That's what it sounded like, right? Grenada is not an international carnival. We do not, you know, advertise ourselves as an international carnival. So I feel there has to be some work around all the stakeholders about who do we bring in to give that Grenadian experience. There is, and I think there is a thin line between, okay, are we nationalistic or are we to a point where we do not want any outsiders? And we have to be able to draw that line between, all right, we definitely have room for other people to come in, because the same way we can be nationalistic about our carnival and say, well, hey, no outsiders. Other countries can do the same thing, and then it becomes an eye for an eye, right? So I think there is room for people to come in from the outside and give their 2 cents. But at what part or what point do we draw that line? Where do we say, all right, enough is enough? Because it feels like we lost control of our carnival. And I know Dexter said control is kind of like a loaded word, but we have to be able to put certain things in place to protect the product, because I felt like we lost the way with the product this year. We definitely lost the way with the product. Now, as for some of the frustrations of the DJs on the ground in Grenada, that's a whole different conversation. So again, I have to say, I am not the
But
expert.
what do you think? I know, but I mean, but you're a DJ. I'm sorry, but you are a DJ. I mean, what?
So loosely, I am a DJ. I play a lot of music. Yeah,
and you also own a GMGT in Brooklyn, New York. I mean, you are connected with these guys. What conversations are being had? What do you think contributed to? Is it that some of these guys were foreign DJs that did not have an awareness of the carnival, of Grenada Carnival?
A lot of the issue of not enough local music is being played is a foreign problem. It is a lot of people not understanding what the assignment was, right? A lot of these guys are coming in and they're used to doing Miami. They're used to doing all the circuit, right? The carnival circuit. And they definitely did not understand the assignment. So I feel like and I think that's a lot to do with the promoters and a lot to do with the band leaders who are bringing in these foreign elements, thinking that they have to cater to the people that's coming into our carnival. But the people that's coming into our carnival do not necessarily want to go to, you know, Labor Day Part 5 or Miami Carnival Part 6. They want Grenada, right? They want jab. They want jab music. They want the local music. I do think there is an argument to say that with the late election this year, the ramp up to the release of music, we could say that was a little bit of an issue, but that shouldn't explain the amount of non-Grenadian music that we heard on the road. There was just too much good music to explain that. So I think a lot of it had to do with the DJs that was hired not understanding the assignment. And even when the SMC made an appeal it did not change anything on Tuesday. On Tuesday, it was more of the same. So how much of it is ego?
I'm wondering if any of those DJs actually saw that status update from the
They
SMC.
did. They definitely did. I'm in a few group chats that they definitely saw. So
why did they dismiss that call in that
I think
case?
part of it is ego. You know, you got paid. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. A lot of these guys, they didn't get to that level by being humble. So, you know, some of it is, you know, this is what they're paying me for. I'm coming in here and I'm just gonna do me. There are a few DJs I saw definitely got some accolades online for understanding the assignment. So I think these bands have to be more purposeful, and the promoters have to be more purposeful in who they are bringing in, right? To give people a piece of the culture. There's always room for everybody to coexist. And we cannot, right, swing the pendulum so far in the other direction. We become the people that's like, no foreigners, because that will be a bad look for us too. But there has to be a balance. There has to be a point where the guys that are coming in are understanding the assignment. The band leaders, the promoters are having the conversations with them around, hey, right? People are coming here to experience something different, and right now we're giving them more of the same. And I feel that was
let me bring in Bobby here. Bobby, you had a band on the road. How did that dynamic unfold with your band, and did you hear from patrons in your band of the lack of local music, at least with your band, and how did you ensure that the DJs that were contracted to play with Summer Crew actually utilized a healthy proportion where the proportion is heavily skewed towards local music than foreign music?
Well, I have always tried to work with DJs that really and truly represent Grenada music all over. You know, and funny enough, we have some Grenadian DJs outside that don't. You know, they don't represent Grenada outside the way they should. But I use DJs that tend to use Grenada music, bring it to the forefront. If I had to have a complaint, it's because they didn't have so much music this year. You were hearing the same music in loop quite often, right? And that too can be, you know, a disadvantage. Just speaking out on the issue of no foreigners. Let's make sure we understand there's a difference here, right? I believe that 90% of the people that go to different carnivals around the world want to experience what that carnival is like in that country. They want to experience that authenticity. It's not that we don't want them to come. We want them to come and experience us. Yes, we need to have some outside influence, because that is how you keep us going. If we block the doors, our artists will never get on shows away. Our DJs will never get to play outside. We wouldn't be allowed to go to parties outside. That's not what we are trying to get across here. We are saying that across the board, we want foreigners, we want all the visitors. When I go to Trinidad, I most certainly will not be going to a Grenadian fete. I want to go to a Trinidadian fete. When I go to St. Lucia, I want to go and experience their fete. If a Grenadian DJ happens to be DJing that fete, great. But I want to go and experience what it is as a St. Lucian fete, so that I can have that experience. I want to build my, you know, in terms of what I see for carnivals, and, you know, just to get me to different cultures. What I think is happening to Grenada is because of it's in us. The problem exists in us. We seem locally here wanting to, I mean, maybe it is that, you know, some of us go to Trinidad and we get Trinidad Carnival, and for years we didn't see Grenada Carnival. I think so. We want the glamour, we want all of the VIP experience that Trinidad offers compare. So we are actually pulling that in here, not understanding that we have people in here that are capable of doing it if we go out and support them. I mean, look at Waggy, he's all inclusive. Look at Play 57, and there are others, right? We have the ability to do it if the support structure is there. If the people will come in, if the support is there, we can build those aspects of it. But on the whole, I believe the strength of any carnival to survive is the local participation within the event. The minute we make it that Grenadians cannot go into their own parties, cannot get and partake a very big role in the feds and the structure, right? We are going to lose it. And Juve has got to be the example. This Juve is the clearest message to the powers that be that we better act now. We better act now. Because if we don't, the most authentic festival that we have, the most authentic part of our festival was severely damaged this year on Carnival Monday. And we all know why. Let's not pretend. We all know why. So it's either we act or we accept that we are going to become a foreign carnival within our carnival. That's the bottom line. That's about, and if you're going for a foreign carnival, then the choices of these DJs that are coming inside and are playing everything American, outside, everything that's outside music, then that's the right choice. That's the choice to go behind if that's what you want to achieve. If the leaders that be decide that that's what we want, then I can't blame what happened here. And I certainly can't blame the DJ who's been hired because that is what he plays. He's been hired by the promoter because that is what he plays, and they're hoping to use that to draw in people. But I also agree with your DJ and the panelists that the people who are coming to our carnival, I believe wholeheartedly, want to experience what we have, right? So that's where the promoter has to take responsibility in this call.
And let me bring back Chairman Gill here. A viewer was saying that this is sort of like a think tank of different ideas that are being articulated here. Chairman Gill, you have any thoughts on what has been articulated by Kareem here and Bob?
I agree with Kareem, and Kareem is a former student of mine as well, you too as well. So you all had the same source of wisdom, historic source of wisdom. But Kareem is spot on, and I think Bobby as well. Basically, the promoters and the band leaders have to give the DJs the playlist. And when we speak about the music, we say nobody's saying no to the foreigners. That's. I mean, in fact, I don't want to use the word foreigners. I don't see my fellow Caribbean brothers and sisters, persons from the diaspora with Caribbean parentage and so on, coming to Grenada as foreigners. Not at all. But the promoters and the band leaders have to give the playlist. And all we ask for is a predominance of Grenadian music. No one is saying you would not get 100% Grenadian music. So we're asking for a predominance of Grenadian music. A predominance, and then here we have the jab music. A lot of the song that won the Road March this year and so on. So when Karim spoke about the Grenadian experience, that's what we're talking about. The authentic Grenadian music as well. So, but all we ask is for the predominance of Grenadian music. We're not saying don't play no other song from the region, because we want our songs to be played outside of Grenada as well. So, we want Terra, we want Boise music, we want Miss Holly Smart music to be played in other carnivals, right? So that all we're asking for is a predominance of our music being played. And we had enough good music this year to satisfy our masqueraders, our listening public, so that and this again is not, in 2022 it probably stung a bit, but it is something that has been creeping in. Let us not pretend it's a one-time thing that 2022 the DJs playing what they want. In other years, with certain bands and so on, we are not hearing enough Grenada soca. So we have to agree on that as well. So I think going forward, we need to engage all the promoters, the band leaders, and so on, and say to them, hey, these is what are the things we want to do. Because in terms of the playing of the music and so on, we need to have that conversation as well. From the SMC perspective, we need to have that conversation with them. It's not to say to them that we want to give you an SMC playlist or so on and so forth, but we, as Karim, just to borrow his term, they need to understand the assignment as well in terms of the promotion of the Grenada music.
Now, let us talk about, and I'm going to bring Dexter back here. And I want all of you gentlemen to come in to respond to this question. It appears as if Spice Mass is now a dichotomy of private events headlined by many foreign artists juxtaposed against the local events that have traditionally defined Carnival, such as your Soca Monarch, your Calypso Monarch finals, your Panorama show, your Queen show, your Juve. How can we get to a place, gentlemen, where the former doesn't necessarily kill the latter? Dexter, I will start with you on that question.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bob. Let me just, before I answer, let me just go back to something Karim said that is very,
Yeah.
very important. And I like the fact that he is based in New York, so he's coming from that perspective. There are a series of international carnivals that are essentially an amalgamation of Caribbean carnivals. So Notting Hill in London, Toronto, New York, Miami. So when you go to those carnivals, you get a mix of everything. But the authentic carnivals start here in the Caribbean. So when you visit St. Lucia, Dominica, St. Vincent, Trinidad and Tobago, and Grenada, you get what is authentically us, and then that is exported to create that amalgamation wherever carnivals are celebrated in the diaspora. So that is a very important point. Additionally, the fact that there are no Grenadian DJs on the program, and for one reason or the other, they're not available this morning, it's not by design, it's not by accident. Dr. Bob, this thing did not start on Carnival Monday and Tuesday. There were people complaining throughout the Fed season that it's quite possible a Vincentian song might win the road match because so much of the non-Grenadian music was being played in the lead up to Carnival. And that prevails also on the radio stations. Some radio stations in Grenada essentially have a design to push more non-Grenadian music than Grenadian music. So what transpired on Monday and Tuesday was a continuation of what started. If we, and Bobby made that point, if we take accountability and responsibility for pushing our own, none of the DJs coming in here would be able to play what they want because they would have been so inundated with what is happening. So for example, if Karim as a Grenadian DJ played before me as a quote unquote foreign DJ, and I played half an hour of jab tunes and mash up the place, he cannot bring in his set. He's going to whisper in my ears, can you give me some of those tunes so that I can play them? But if we as the Grenadian DJ playing what they are accustomed playing in Miami, he's just going to follow suit. And that is what transpired. So we have to take back the reins. We have to force the radio stations to understand your assignment is to promote Grenada. If I want to hear Kess or Marshall, there are many outlets. But if I want to hear Jab King, there might be only a radio station locally that is available with his music. Now, to answer your question, there has to be a design. Like I said, there has to be a balance, obviously. Carnival is evolving, the product is evolving. There are going to be outside influences. We want people to come in and participate and lend value to what we have here. But there has to be a design and a balance. To me, we have to determine what do we want and how much are we going to allow to creep in in any one given season. It appeared in 2022, the floodgates were open and everybody could come in and do whatever they want. We have to set targets, we have to set limits, not contravening any treaties, a la CSME and so on. But the SMC has some control to the extent that local promoters cannot do an event without getting permit from the SMC. Now, if that is applicable to the local promoters, why is it not applicable to those from the outside, and how does that work? But again, my interest is to see a proper design, a proper rollout of a carnival season. So probably in January, you see something that says, okay, Calypso is on Sunday, Soca Monarch is on Friday, Panorama finishes at 12, so there's a space between 1 and 5 for a local promoter to do something. Because I can tell you, Dr. Bob, if we continue like that, there's a promoter or two who's already licking his lips and looking at Carnival Friday for possibility of having a fete if Soca Monarch continues down that road. If people are not going to go to Soca Monarch and you have shows on Saturday and Sunday, somebody's already making plans for Carnival Friday. But we need to establish Carnival is controlled by the organizing body. So the organizing body puts out its calendar and says, guys, if you want to participate, there are some missing dates that we can plug in some private events, but not walk our way around the private events.
Bobby, same question. How do we strike that balance to ensure that we are protecting traditional aspects of the culture?
I agree with Dexter. I mean, we have to factor in what it is that we're trying to achieve. What is the mission here, right? Because if the mission is to pack the place with foreigners, right? Pack it. When I say foreigners, I speak as visitors. Let me correct you because I do agree with Ali. I don't want to make it sound like foreigners is not us.
We are Caribbean people. I mean,
Right. So visitors, we have to factor in the balance, right? And I mean, look, without calling our country's name, in the Caribbean, there was 2 carnivals that were the highlight of the Caribbean for many years, right? One carnival they were basically second to Trinidad. They took the role of let's get Trinidad involved in everything because they opened the doors. But now you see which carnival is suffering, which one we're not talking about anymore in the same strength. Everybody's looking for those small island carnivals. Everybody's looking to head St. Lucia's growing, right? And let me tell you, I went to St. Lucia Carnival a couple of times, and the experience there is unique to them. Their events and the way they do their stuff is unique to them, right? And I will say this, I mean, this is what people are traveling for. So the SMC has to say, right, we are going to make a start. We are going to give the foreigners, the visitors, and the locals the product that will be representative of Grenada. So that when they come, this is what will make, and you know, I feel as though if we had a problem getting visitors to come, then I can understand. The fact is, our carnival was growing by leaps and bounds every year. And we had that authentic feeling. So what is this massive need to change? What was the massive need to change? Do I believe, can we do things to enhance events? I've said, for instance, let me give you 2 examples. Panorama. I believe the way we can enhance our panorama, because you want more people to come to it, I believe the way we can enhance the program is like this. The exact same way in Trinidad they do our international Soca Monarch is the exact same way we are the last of the Caribbean carnivals. Let us get the governments involved. Let us have our competition just prior to Carnival, and then the winner also represents us at an international panorama on Carnival Saturday night, held here in Grenada. Or if we can't go that way, we have the other international bands coming as the guest bands, just same way we bring in foreign artists to be guest artists and they turn out. We have to structure that they're the guest artists. Let us get the foreign pan sides, because I can tell you, I went to a pan show, it was I forgot the name they used it, but they had a couple bands from Trinidad. And I saw Grenadian bands, and I always used to think, and this is me, I'm not a huge pan person. I always thought Trinidad pan sides were, you know, miles ahead, because I grew up going to the panorama in Trinidad, right? And I could tell you, I was so impressed with the Grenada pan sides in that format, right? They really, really impressed me. And I think if we did something like that, you would see more of a national spirit come out to support Grenada pan sides. You'll see people choosing to go to the stadium on that Carnival Saturday to go out and support Grenada. And it begins there, and then the love can grow, right? There are things that we can do to enhance the events and attract more people. The same way, for instance, the Mound in Trinidad was used, right? The same way, there are things we can do. We don't have to say, you know what, we're giving up on that event. Yeah, let's go this way. We don't have to do that. There's ways and means we could, you know, build. And I say, we either sell or we build. And to me, I've always been, you see that t-shirt? I've always been, let's build this. Because that is what I stand for. That comes first, you know, to me. And at the end of the day, I think that all of us who have played such a big role out there, and I mean, I speak to so many people in from the job for when you go on these circuits and you see people outside representing Grenada, flying Grenada hard to build this, right? I really, really feel disappointed in this here, but I will also say this. I'm not going to blame anybody besides all of us, because collectively we have to change it. Collectively. No one individual can do it. Our leaders have to understand the role they play, But the rest of us also have to understand we have a major role, because if we saw what happened for Juve and we satisfied that that was okay, then something is wrong with us as Grenadians. Something is wrong with us, because soon I can tell you it will be a different artist. Yep. It will be a different show on a Sunday, and maybe more shows, and then maybe Juve comes 8 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock, and then all of a sudden there's no Juve. Right? There's no Juve. So stand up and fight and protect. Otherwise, we know what's coming.
Do you think, though, that we and a commenter, a viewer is making the point here? Benedict Rouget is making the point that Grenada Carnival should not be the only one that happens in St. George's. Promote the carnival nationally. Try making what happens in St. George with an international flavor, and outside of St. George, as a strictly Grenadian flavor with music and tradition. Because our reports from the outer parish seem to suggest, for example, that in Grenville and St. David, and in St. Patrick, they had successful Juve activities. They had successful traditional mass activities. So when we are talking about carnival here, are we necessarily only talking about what happens in St. George's per se? But Bobby, your thoughts on it? I want to bring Chairman Gill here and Dexter to articulate that as well. Bobby, and then I'll get to Chairman Gill and Dexter.
Well, I mean, the thing about dividing an island like that on the main weekend is, again, you can lose the flavor of what is there. Because if we, for instance, had all over Grenada hotel belts, people, foreigners being able to experience and exist in that and seeing that culture and staying all over, then we're talking a different culture there, right? But I believe when it comes down to the main days of Carnival, if we are trying to get the outsiders, the visitors, to see us, our island, and then we only portray outside, right? That is going to work against us for the survival of our festival for the long run. Because those same people are going to come down to, all right, when the next island comes up and goes more authentic, let's go to that carnival instead. And then we would see the exodus that has happened to a certain island that didn't, we're supposed to look at examples that were set before us. And if we do, we would see there's a clear example out there that we could look at on the road that we are following right now, right? So I just saying the example is there, right? And I love what I'm seeing local wise in the parishes, and I'm all for that, right? But I also believe that that is a big part of what will keep us for Grenada culture surviving and visitors wanting to come to our island and experience it. I don't think we can, we can do two at the same time and sell out town, right? Where all the visitors are in terms of hotel belts, right? And somehow say that we're doing our carnival and our product justice.
Your thoughts, Chairman Gill, on that idea?
Well, I mean, the parish carnivals are in a good place, and there is needs for improvement. Ideally, not just and when part of the discussion, some things came out. Grenada Carnival is not just the climax, the weekend of the climax, and just shows. That is why I spoke earlier with regards to the Calypso tents, the traditional mass in Victoria, the old mass with the Lions Club with an SMC collaboration and so on. Carnival is not just the shows that climax. Of course, that's the climax. You want it to be excellent. You want it to be good. You want that to show to the world. St. George's at the end of the day is the capital city, and that must be the showcase. Yes, so we need to have the major Juve and so on in the town. It needs to stand out. But at the same time, we've built a carnival whereby St. David's, Grenville, Sates, and Goa had an excellent Juve as well. Mr. Killer was on that truck Tuesday, and we had a really good time in Goa Carnival Tuesday morning. So at the parish, Juve is another experience, Bobby, for the tourists and the visitors. Not because the hotel belt is in the south, we have to do everything in the south, right? Give them an opportunity as well as what we sought to do with the Cambode on Carnival Sunday and the Tuesday and so on, to go to the rural parts, go to the outer parishes. Community tourism. and so on and so forth. So that we need to engender and we need to build. Yes, we can't just keep the tourism product. It's not just the town. Although we want a strong carnival in the town, in the capital. That is our major showpiece. So that we must spare nothing to ensure that Juve, Monday Night Mass, Tuesday Parade, and so on is strong in the capital city. But we've always had a very good parish-based event on our final days of Carnival. Whether it's Peter Bean Band in Grenville, traditional mass in Victoria and Guelph, strong Juve in Sattes and St. David, it is all part of our authentic Grenadian Carnival product. So that's extremely important. So just to get back, Kelani was speaking about juxtaposing the shows, private shows and the national shows. SMC major events are competition-based events, basically, and yet all, not just private promoters that have to get their license or permission to do fets, also foreign promoters have to do fets. I think there is a lacuna in that this year we've seen a lot of the cruises, the boat cruises, whole day, whole night. This does not require SMC's permission or license. They deal strictly with the Port Authority, right? And they get their permission from the Port Authority. So SMC does not really have a say in the cruises. And I think that is something that needs to be addressed, because this year we have seen more cruises than we've ever seen before. I know that Bob used to do really nice cruises with the catamarans and so on. We've had that in the past. But this year, the scale on which we saw cruises, I'm not sure if anyone saw that coming. But just to say, it is the Port Authority that deals with these cruises. But I think a strong case ought to be made that these cruises as well needs to get their license or the permission from the SMC so that we can control that. This year, we have no control, but I think going forward, we must, the SMC must have some control, because I think it impacts, though the event is on the sea, it impacts what happens on the land. Yeah?
Okay.
So that is a perspective that we need to look at.
Okay. Now, we have to get to the next segment, gentlemen, and I know that some of you, it's still that Tabanka season. I like to call this period of Carnival the Tabanka cool down season. And as I return to North America tomorrow, I would begin to experience my own Tabanka from Carnival. So what I want to do is, gentlemen, to give you the opportunity to have some closing comments. And I want to begin with you, Kareem, some closing comments. Moving forward, what we want to do for this particular closing comment segment is to talk about how we can move the product forward and ensure that we have a better year. And perhaps this year was an anomaly, who knows? And perhaps it was an exception and not the rule. But
No.
Kareem, I would start with you.
So this year wasn't an exception. This year was the slow drip into the avalanche. That's what happened this year, because that problem has been building for probably the last 6 years, minus that 2 years, obviously, for the pandemic. Those complaints has only been getting louder and louder for the last 3, 4, 5 years. And I remember this week I had a post on Facebook and I was like, I expect the people involved in Carnival to go out and hire the exact same DJs again for 2023. And the masqueraders are going to complain again. And I was like, that is the definition of insanity, right? You complain about the same thing over and over and expecting it to change. And a gentleman came to me and he said, do people make a decision on playing for a mass band based on the costume and what they get with the band, or on the DJ? And they definitely don't make the decision on the DJ. So that aspect of who do you get to curate that musical experience has to fall on the band leaders, the promoters, because believe it or not, the musical consumer in the Caribbean is way more savvy than the basic music consumer in the US. They have more exposure to different types of music. They understand music on a different level. And I'm not saying that to say somebody is better or anything like that. It's just what it is. So I feel more thought has to go into the curation of that musical experience and how it is brought across to your masqueraders, your spectators, the people that's listening on the sidelines, the people that's viewing it online. So we have to get better at that. We definitely have to get better at that. And, you know, we just have to keep in mind that what we have is unique. No one else has it. That jab experience that we do, there's nothing like it in the world. I don't care what people say. There's no other jab experience, Juve experience as Grenada. And we need to figure out, how do we maintain that authenticity, but still being able to bring people in to enjoy that with us. There is no such thing. Like I said, Pandora's box is open. Grenada Carnival is not going back in a little box where nobody knows it exists. That day is gone. So we just have to adapt to the influx of people coming in and seeing opportunity in our little island and figure out how to deal with it best. The other thing that I want to say that has been kind of a disappointment, and I don't know if that's a fact on the ground. When we open up platforms to people to put their 2 cents in to affect change, they do not take advantage of it. People will complain for 3 hours until you say, okay, come and be a part of the solution. And then there's always an excuse about, I can't do this. Maybe if I say this, people, you know what? Grenadians, your unique product is starting to lose some of that authenticity. You guys need to come back in now and sit at the table and be a part of the solution versus, all right, we're going to complain from here until Friday. But when somebody comes to our door and say, how do we change this? All of a sudden we have nothing to say, or we feel like we don't want to put ourselves on the spot, right? We need to be able to say, hey, who do we talk to? Where do we go? Start committees, whether it's via the parishes, whether it's via villages, whether it's via whatever it is. We have to come together to figure out, how do we fix it? Because this is our own. And if we don't take the pride and take the day or the hours off to improve it, yeah, it's just going to get worse over time.
That's again your very blunt and frank assessment of the product there. Bobby, I would get to you because I know that you have to go, and respecting your time, you do still have activities. So I will get to you for some closing comments, Bobby.
Okay, first of all, I must put in for my good friend. Ali, I just want to say this. I am 100% in support of the outer parishes, and I think they have at least helped us to survive a bit of this, because they stood and they grew. What I'm saying is that to fix the outer parishes and really get that whole experience, we also have to fix our national transportation service. We have to be mindful of what we are doing. It's working so far, but it could work a lot better in terms of moving our guests around. Many of our guests, I agree with you, they go to the different parishes, but that also leads to a problem because of how they get that way and how they get back for them to partake in the main events. And that speaks to our late starts, everything like that. So it's a big problem that we have to sit down and really analyze and put a team in place that understands the logistics part of it. Even from Monday night masses, which is a massive problem, which I believe there are easy solutions to, but people are afraid of a little bit of change, right? And I think we have to look at that as well. In terms of going forward, again, and I say this, it's the Grenadians who have to actually stand up and say to themselves, we have to put ourselves in, what do we want done? And then we need to make sure we have the right people, the logistics, because you can put people down. You can say, all right, you go be a marshal to this band. But if that marshal comes to the band and he hasn't got a clue, or she doesn't have a clue of what is required, right, to be able to be a marshal, to what to do, you just take a job then that could be a problem too. So we need to have the logistical side of it really set up properly. And that begins with conversations. That begins with conversations now. Because we had 2 years and we dropped the ball in some areas. So we already know that this time around, we have to work from now. We have to get the people in place now, and we have to begin fixing the problem now. On the whole, however, we must hold on to something that's very, very important. Mm-hmm. We were embarrassed once by a bad experience with mass bands. We're embarrassed a second time with an experience that happened out there. And those things go to a world stage, right? Most things like that, we can't afford a third one. A third one might be the end of us. right? Especially rolling in a pattern like this. We got to make sure, I know some things are beyond some controls, but we got to get in here now and we got to say this will not happen again. And however we solve this present one, which you're going to discuss later, the world is watching. The world is watching. And we better solve it properly and we better project it out properly that in Grenada, we are not going to tolerate certain things happen against Grenadians. And I really hope that however it is solved, that comes out of this, that it comes out, you know? And that's basically my comments. I mean, we had a safe carnival for the most part besides that, but one incident can spoil the entire thing for us. So let's hope that this is handled in the right way, in the best interest of Grenada first, right? And to say it could be best interest in terms of their justice, right? In terms of what is right and what is wrong, right? But let us hope that whatever happens, Grenada is projected in the right light out of this. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you, Bobby, for your contribution. We do hope to have you back on the program, not only in the heat of the carnival season, at the zenith of the carnival season, but as I've said before, carnival conversations need to be happening in December. It needs to be happening in January. It needs to be happening around Easter. We ought not to wait until this build-up period to be having conversations on carnival. We here at the Bubb Report should be able to come to all of the stakeholders in December to ask and inquire, where are we with respect to the preparation for the next season? And where are we with respect to the development of the product? And where are we with respect to ensuring that the issues we are articulating are in fact being addressed? So Bobby, thank you so much for appearing on the program.
All right, thanks. A great program again, and I'm here anytime you need me.
Absolutely. Dexter, I will get to you for some closing comments.
Thank you. Let me just say, I think we need to, in moving forward, we need to determine what we are trying to do. This balance between cultural expression and economic benefits, and our place on the circuit, on the carnival circuit. Do we want to be like everybody else? Are we just going to open the floodgates to everyone? Or are we going to hold on to some things that are authentically Grenadian? And that plan has to come very quickly. There is a document I will refer to that was developed by a marketing firm from St. Lucia. There's something called the Creative and Cultural Industries Innovative Fund, which is capitalized by the Caribbean Development Bank. And in 2021, Axela Marketing from St. Lucia developed a document, a 155-page document for the branding and commercialization of carnivals in Dominica, St. Lucia, and Grenada. And that is a very intellectual and informative document that we don't have to follow to the T, but we can pull aspects out of it. And I think those are the conversations we need to start to have. And I'm happy to hear you, Dr. Bob, say that you want to continue the conversation, not just in the heat of the moment, because normally what would happen after we wrap up these discussions in late August and early September, the next time we begin to talk again is in June. But I think we need to have, and although it is carnival and jab and soca music, we need to have a more intellectual conversation and approach. There is too much at stake. It is not just what prevails economically, but our identity as a people. 2 years from now, we will be celebrating 50 years of independence. Do we want to stand on the highway in days while DJs parade the streets playing music that does not sound like Grenada? No, that's not what we want. What prevails in the outer parishes in terms of the traditional mass has been brought to our attention more so this year because of the vloggers. But that happens, the Veco bands would go out every Juve morning on Monday morning in Victoria, the Shortney bands, Lakey and those guys from Hermitage and Monkridge. We have to highlight those things, and we have to be firm. We have to be unapologetic about our identity. This is what we have on offer. Yes, we are going to allow some outside influences. We are going to evolve and we are going to tweak, but we have to be unapologetic about trying to sell that which is Grenada and Grenadian.
Absolutely, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you for your valuable contribution this morning. It's welcomed. And Chairman Gill, we would end with you as the chairman of the Spice Mass Corporation for some closing comments.
In closing, allow me to highlight, I saw someone by the name of Ms. Giselle Sylvester made a comment with regards to the Queen Show, and parishes having their own Queen shows, which will lead up and build up to the National Queen Show. I want to endorse that approach, and I believe I just thought I should mention that in closing. The conversation must continue. As I say to you, Kellen, privately and through this program, the discussion of Carnival just simply cannot be in June, July, right? We're talking about 100,000 or whatever issues. We need to have a year-round conversation in regards to Carnival. I believe that in going forward, we need to strengthen the stakeholder organizations. The Calypso associations, we've been saying that for the last, 20 years. We still have two Calypso associations. We need to have one. And that Calypso association need to be representative, need to represent both Calypso and soca artists, so that when the artist speaks, they speak with one voice across the board, right? We need a strong, the Pan Association, they're well organized and they're a strong unit. The Mass Association, they have strengthened considerably this year. I believe that strong stakeholder organizations with must be a part of Spice Mass, and I want to encourage that, because with the strong stakeholder organizations, all these issues that we are talking about here, with regards to the Calypso and the Calypso finals, the Pan and Panorama, and just on Pan, this year we have done a considerable amount of Pan. For instance, we had Pan on Monday night, we had Pan in the Canbule, we had Pan yesterday again in the Orva. The whole idea this year is to, and I believe going forward, we must continue to have Pan music played throughout our carnival, not just on Panorama. Yes, and Dexter made the point earlier. Grenada is the second strongest after Trinidad in regards to Pan. And you would have observed the sort of investment we try to make this year with the Panorama. I, for one, believe that Saturday night is Panorama night. This year we try the audience with different artists and so on and so forth. And whatever vision, whatever we see with regards to going forward with Panorama must be done in consultation with the Pan Association and the Pan movement. I don't believe that we can dictate, or we should dictate to the Pan movement what it is that we want to do with Pan, and we're not even talking to them and so on. They must be part of the solution going forward to strengthen our Panorama. Going forward, we need, I want to say that cultural ambassadors must put their country first. Yes? In other words, soca artists, Calypsonians, and so on, we must put the Spice Mass product first, even before ourselves, even before private fetes and so on and so forth. And that consciousness, it begins with us. You know, as the SMC is the custodian, is responsible for putting on the Carnival product. But so much of the Carnival product revolves around our individual contribution. In other words, if the soca artists do have good music, or the Calypsonians do have good music, or the mass band leaders do portray good mass, or have nice costumes and so on, that is what is reflective of the product. So that is why you need strong stakeholder organizations. That is why we need our cultural ambassadors, the Pan, Mass, the Calypso and soca artists, singers to put the Spice Mass product first. You know, it's always easy to criticize. It's always easy to say, you know, them fellas ain't doing this and them fellas ain't doing that and so on and so forth. But it comes down to us as a people, as a nation, of what we want our carnival to look like. So I believe that the planning for 2023 carnival starts now, and putting in structures place. Some of the issues that we have highlighted this year, some of the negatives, let's do our utmost to ensure that we can straighten those kinks and that we can get 2023 carnival. And this year there is much certain. There will be much more certainty in 2023. I mean, while it is fair to say that we didn't have carnival for 2 years, so that some planning could have taken place, yes, I believe that the SMC must take responsibility with regards to that. But I became chair of the Spice Mass in November of 2021. And I can say to you that one of the first things we had to address was how could we have done carnival in the pandemic, and how could we have done carnival outside of the pandemic. And that is where the plan A and the plan B thing really came from. So that, and at the end of the pandemic, when we learned that we had carnival, got confirmation that we are going to have carnival, plan B carnival with all of the restrictions removed was in March this year. And even then, we went into the elections campaign. So it was a challenging year with regards to the time and the space we had to execute. But I believe that must not give us any excuses for the weaknesses that we've had this year. But all in all, Kellen, I believe the carnival was a success, a massive success. The parish carnivals, the tents, the Queen Show, the traditional mass. It's good to see the old mass coming back. So there are strong aspects of it. But of course, there's tremendous room for improvement going forward.
All right.
I think we're out of time.
We are out of time, Chairman Gill, Kareem Marcel. We have Mr. Clouden here in wait. I don't know if Mr. Clouden, a few years ago, you used to bring your horse in Juve. I don't know if you still do that, sir.
Well, I think that as my friend and colleague, Ambassador Gill, has indicated, there was a short period to do anything, and it takes some time to train the horse to become accustomed to the vehicular traffic. So, but next year, and now that we are moving forward, I should be there, God's willing.
All right. I hope to see your horse, that jab horse there.
That's a traditional part of our carnival as well. Mr.
That's right.
On his horse, Juve morning.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Kellen, for having me. I leave you now with the other guests.
Absolutely, panel. Thank you so much, Ambassador Gill, Kareem Marcel, and we had Bobby Steele earlier and Mr. Dexter Mitchell. Thank you all for this segment. Folks, what we will do at this point is to take a quick break, and we will come back to talk about maritime issues in the context of the incident that unfolded on the Harbour Master cruise, where we witnessed in a now viral video the scuffle that ended with an assault on Grenada's national world athletic champion down there at the Port St. George. So we will take a quick break and we will be right back. Why would we have ambassadors representing the state that do not understand clearly what their terms of reference are?
That's to the cards that I have drawn that I am the minister at this point in time. And for members of the public...
But you're also a servant of the people. The unions are not threatening to withdraw their labor, and neither are they threatening to shut the country down, as you did.
I think your summarization of my position is highly inaccurate, and may I dare say a bit inflammatory.
The strategy did not work the last time for you. So what would make this?
Well, you're assuming that we're doing the same strategy.
Very proud of what you're doing, and I think it's much needed. So thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you again for watching the Bubb Report. Viewers and listeners, we want to thank you sincerely. Ashley, thank you so very much. Senator Chester Humphrey, welcome to the Bubb Report. Mr. Mitchell, welcome to the program. The Honorable Jumani Williams, we call him Jumani, who is the public advocate for the city of New York. The Honorable Baz Diopande, former Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Pandey, welcome to the Bubb Report of Grenada. The Honorable Tobias Clement. Mr. Clement, welcome to the Bubb Report. Is it Nicolai or Nikolai? I hope I pronounced it.
Nikolai.
It's Nikolai. Thank you.
Yes.
And welcome to the program, Her Excellency Ambassador Luan Gilchrist. Mr. Randall Robinson, you are here in your private capacity and in your personal capacity. Yesterday, we learned that you were detained by law enforcement in Grenada. So you come from a family of public servants.
Yes, we are a family of public servants.
You're saying that you have to do more, but my question is, what have you done as president of the union to ensure that that happens?
To the cards that I have drawn that I am the minister at this point in time. And for members of the public...
But you're also a servant of the people. Why would we have ambassadors representing the state that do not understand clearly what their terms of reference are? And viewers and listeners, we wish to welcome you to the final segment of the Bubb Report. And we want to make sense and dissect from a Marine Administration perspective what transpired there at Port St. George. So I'm now joined by Mr. Lazarus Joseph, who is the head of the Marine Department at the Grenada Ports Authority, as well as Mr. Anselm Clouden, who is a maritime attorney. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Dr. Bubb, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Mr. Joseph, if you can unmute your mic there. And Mr.
Thank-
Clouden, I believe this is your first time, but go ahead, Lazarus.
Yes, good morning, Dr. Bob and Mr. Clouden. It's a pleasure to be on the program yet again.
Absolutely. And Mr. Clouden, this is your first time on the program. We have been attempting to reach you on previous occasions, but we are happy to have you here and we're happy to have your expertise on this issue. But Mr. Joseph, I want to begin with you. Whenever incidents like what we saw unfolded at Port St. George, what role does the Grenada Ports Authority have in adjudicating any sort of conflict resolution? We saw somebody actually being thrown overboard, although the folks are saying that the gentleman accidentally stumbled into the water like a gazelle. I don't know, but that's their interpretation of the events. But whenever these things happen, what role does the port have in adjudicating that kinds of conflict that develops?
Yes, good morning again, Dr. Bob, and your
Yes.
viewing and listening public. With respect to the Harbour Master's operation, I'd like to start from the beginning. The Harbour Master, request was made for her to conduct cruises in Grenada waters. It is not an unusual request. She was here in 2019. We have had other vessels from CARICOM countries also engaging in cruising activity. We are a ports authority. We are a facilitator of trade. We cannot ban or restrict the trade of any vessels, despite the flag or nationality of the owners, from operating once they meet the requirements. And the requirements in this respect is the Powercraft Act. They have to apply to the Director of Maritime Affairs. They are inspected for safety, and once they've passed the inspection, a license is issued in accordance with the Powercraft Act. So in that respect, the Harbour Master was licensed, and she was allowed to have her cruises. On that evening, what turned out to be a very unfortunate event, and I make no distinction between our national hero and Dummy James from behind the back of Bao. That kind of behavior should not be tolerated. I was there because I brought the ship in on the penultimate cruise, and I was waiting to take her out on that final cruise. So I saw what happened on the ramp, not the commotion on board. When I was on board, I didn't see any evidence of fight or commotion. I disembarked the vessel maybe about 7:10 and waited for the final cruise, which was scheduled to leave at 8 o'clock. What was the role of the Ports Authority? Well, what I did when I saw what was happening, I immediately informed the Port Facility Security Officer, which is Adjunct Commissioner Mr. Don McKenzie, briefed him on what I witnessed and requested his presence, which he did show up later on in the evening. And that is what is supposed to be done, because the Ports Authority is not just a terminal operator. We are responsible for the direction of the Maritime Administration. We are the Maritime Directorate. And at that time, I was acting under my own authority as a marine surveyor and inspector.
Okay. Now, you said you informed the inspector of what transpired. A report is made. Now, does the Port Authority have any, I would say, law enforcement powers when it comes to incidents in ships, or is that handled by the Royal Grenada Police Force?
No, well, we do have under the Maritime Administration the Cap 303, which gives effect to the ISPS code. The director does have powers, and even under the Powercraft Act, we can pull the license of the Harbour Master. We have not reached that stage as yet.
And why is that?
Well, remember, this matter is being handled by the court. It is a criminal matter, and there's a civil suit. Whether or not we believe maritime safety regulations, maritime safety procedures were breached, then we can take the action necessary. We must remember that the Harbour Master being a Barbadian flag vessel in Grenada, we also have powers of port state control. And Grenada is a member of the Caribbean Memorandum of Understanding on Port State Control. So we can conduct a port state control inspection pursuant to what we have seen happen. And if necessary, we can have a more detailed inspection looking at the qualifications of the crew. Because the fact is, we are limited in what we can do in terms of legislation. And I say this, the Small Commercial Vessel Code, which the Harbour Master is holds a certificate therefrom. Grenada has not ratified that code, although it is ratified in most of the Caribbean islands. So that limitation, we cannot enforce something that we ourselves have not accepted. In saying that, there is a draft regulation, so it's just for this new administration, the cabinet to approve it and have that into our national law. What if we were signatory to that code? It would have been easier to conduct an inspection to see, first of all, if the officers, the captain and his officers, have had crowd control training, because that is a requirement of the code for party boats and their like. And it is important. If these people have had that kind of training, maybe the outcome we have seen would not have happened, but I don't know.
And let me bring in Mr. Clouden here. You were hearing Mr. Joseph here. Mr. Clouden, in background, we were talking about the Ports Authority Act and the role of the Ports Authority Act in adjudicating these issues. Anything else you wish to add to what Mr. Joseph just said?
Oh, yes, indeed. I'll be privileged to do so. I was somewhat disappointed and taken aback by the conduct of the captain in maritime law. And let me begin by saying the Port Authorities Act, Cap 247, details a plenitude of, and bestows on the authority a plenitude of sweeping powers, let alone the subsidiary legislations as referred to by one of the authorized officers of the authority. There are all kinds of codes, some of which Grenada ought to accede to, but due to the past experiences we have had, and I have had an on-hand experience between 2008 and 2013 when I was ambassador to the IMO, the International Maritime Organization. And there's a lot of things, and they were encouraged to do. I guess we don't have an international registry of ships and shipping, so we're not enforceable. And this is why what happened on the harbor, port or port harbor, whatever it's called,
Harbour Master.
Harbour Master,
Yeah.
ought not to have taken place, having regard to certain maritime procedures that emerge out of IMCO, that is the International Maritime Organization, to which Grenada is a signatory party, and therefore bound by its convention. We have not implemented a number of the enforceable aspects of certain international treaties and organizations and the like that we are signatory parties to. But having said that, let me just take you through to amplify the plenitude of powers bestowed on the authority, let alone from a captain. Because as you know, a captain is in charge of everything on his ship, in his ship. He can conduct marriages. If there's a mutiny, he can quell it. He can order someone to be punished on the ship. And therefore, by parity of reasoning, there was a ship a few years ago that took some Italian tourists and floundered on a reef. And the captain was seen to leave the ship first, or the like, or in the first group. And he was charged with manslaughter. He's now doing time in an Italian prison. It amplifies the importance of a captain So when this captain behaved in that fashion and became part of the madness that was taking place as a consequence of the absence of proper procedures, for example, I'll read them to you. The powers of authorized officers, such as the one spoken there, they ought to be on the ship at all times, take charge of the ship. The captain ought not to find himself in such a brawl, because now he has lost the immunity that international maritime law has bestowed upon him. And I would suspect that an investigation ought to be conducted to inquire into his capacity, mental capacity and otherwise, to continue in that position. Because all he had to do was to call for help. Look at it. I mean, the Act makes provision for it. And the Act penalizes those who derogate from it. Look at Section 19. It outlines all the general powers of the authority. And I'll just read part of it to you so that the public will appreciate the authority has to do a better job. If we are moving forward, we must move forward in a manner, if even, and I dare say, if even we are not a signatory to a particular convention that ensures safety and a certain protocol that is accepted by the international community, then we ought to implement its conditions without necessarily adhering to the treaty. If you don't want to sign the treaty, a matter for you. But those provisions are contemporary with international maritime practice. So it is very unfortunate to hear the officers speak of Grenada not a party to such an important code that would promote national safety. Now look at the general powers of the authority. To appoint license, to acquire, undertaking, to berthing and towing, mooring, shifting and docking of vessels, loading and discharging of goods, and embarking or disembarking passengers. And it goes on and on. And then you get to 85, where the authority could arrest the ship. I'm advised by my learned friend, Mr. Sylvester, that he has done a personal arrest, but here it is. In accordance with sections 85, miscellaneous provisions, the authority, a person who, being on any premises, vessel of the authority, without lawful excuse, the proof whereof shall lie on him or her, discharges a firearm or does anything which may cause injury to any person on such premises, vessel, or vehicle, and it goes on right down to powers of arrest. Damages or without lawful excuse interferes with any property of the authority, willfully obstructs the authority. But this is more directed to the authority in itself. But here you have powers of arrest. Any person who commits an offense mentioned in section 76, 77, or 85 of this act may be arrested without warrant by an authorized officer or a police officer, so that the act gives them even police powers without being a police, because it follows the construction. It says by an authorized officer or a police officer. Okay.
So the question I have, and I'm going to bring in Mr. Joseph again, with respect to the arrest of the ship, it does appear that a private party is the one that proceeded with the arrest of the ship. So, Mr. Joseph, the question I have for you is, what gives the Port Authority that power to arrest the ship, or what normally is the timeline that you follow to arrest the ship that really precluded you for doing so, and really a lawyer is the one, Mr. Derek Sylvester is the one that did that. Mr. Joseph?
Yes, thanks. And thank you, Mr. Clouden, for the information provided. But our premise with the Harbour Master was based on Cap 303, the Shipping Act, as opposed to the Grenada Ports Authority Act, and Cap 249, the Powercraft Act. That is where the director has the powers to license foreign vessels operating coastal waters for the purposes of cruising, etc. In terms of arrest and detention, that is that is something that is not taken lightly, because if you falsely detain a vessel without clear grounds for doing so, I mean, you can lose your shirt, so to speak. and the same lawyers, Mr. Clouden and others, will probably take the Port Authority to the cleaners. What I did that evening, within my own powers as a surveyor, I stopped the vessel from proceeding on that final cruise on the grounds of safe manning. The vessel is issued a safe manning document by the flag state, which states it has to have a captain, X amount of officers, X amount of crew to conduct its operations safely. When the 6 persons were removed for questioning, brought to the central police station, obviously they did not have the full complement of crew to safely operate the vessel, including the captain. So it was legitimate that that vessel should not proceed on the final cruise. But in terms of, because a detention must follow an inspection, you have to have clear grounds to detain a vessel. Because in terms of IMO and all the regulations, ships must not be detained without justification. Maritime commerce is dependent on vessels moving in and out of port as quick as possible. In terms of what we are supposed to do, my instructions, my information, what I've done in terms of informing the port facility security officer at that point in time, it is in keeping with CAP 303, and in particular, the ISPS regulation, SRO 4 of 2011. The matters of security on ships and the ship port interface, the responsible officer is the port facility security officer. He happens to be a senior police officer, and so that matter was taken care of.
Mr. Clouden, is there anything else you want to add here? Because yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I may wish to just elaborate some more on what my friend has said, and he's correct. As other legislation, for example, the Shipping Act, which is quite different, but it comes under the authority, the Port Authority, notwithstanding it deals with shipping. And the other subsidiary legislation, SRO 2008 and the like, that deal in paramaterial with small crafts and other vessels. But you're right, that's only an aspect. What you are doing, you are an authorized officer, because the Act says that employees of the Port Authority, and when it defines public officer, it includes you. So you could have been more proactive and insist on certain things that were subsequently discovered, pursuant to some of the subsidiary legislation to which you have referred. But the main enforcement mechanism flows from the Port Authorities Act Cap 247. And the other subsidiary legislation have come into effect for proper management, but the management is truncated. So you are a surveyor, but nevertheless an authorized officer that can step in if any of the provisions of 77 contravene. Okay, you say a person who, while on duty, section 77, or lawfully employed on the premises of the authority or upon a vessel or vehicle of the authority, engages the safety of any other person by contravening any of the provisions of this act, that is to say, committing acts of violence and the like, by contravening any lawful order or direction given to such person in connection with his or her duties, by being under the influence of alcohol, by being reckless or negligent, and it goes on to say failure to comply with any of these, the authorized officer can in fact intervene. I mean, that is lucidly clear. So that all employees of the authority, when you look at 19, let me just take it in 45 and 19. Let me go to 45 to bring greater clarity, to show that what has to happen Even in fact, we're loading and unloading pursuant to sections 45, okay, where dues are not paid. It says if dues or charges payable under this act are owing in respect of a vessel, an authorized officer may, with such assistance as he or she deems necessary, enter such vessel, and he or she may arrest the vessel and the tackle, apparel, and furniture thereof, and may detain the same until the dues or charges owing have been paid. So you do have authority to arrest, because the vessel would ultimately need a clearance. And so the port under this act, this is the governing piece of legislation that gives you all that authority, which you have truncated into different departments. So you in survey, but you are still an authorized employee of the authority and can exercise your powers as enabling you under the act. But let me just refer to something I think I have been clamoring for the longest time. And now, we're moving forward. The country is going to be moving forward. We are all hands on deck, and we're going to be doing the best we can for Grenada in all aspects. I would make a contribution, as I am now, in maritime affairs and maritime law. Let me say something. There's a critical need for an international registry of ships in Grenada. That would, in a sense, increase the revenue of the Port Authority, and therefore it would have sufficient funds to implement a lot of the international requirements and a lot of the mandatory monitoring of passengers. Look, I wonder if they checked and see that every passenger has a life jacket. I wonder if they checked to determine how many passengers were on board, and you click and click and click, as is done in other countries. You understand? And there are a number of things. He said the license, everything. The Port Authority has the plenitude of powers to regulate its administration and affairs. And this act is a broad act that gives them all those powers. They can now ask and conduct an inquiry into the competence of the captain to remain as captain of that ship. And whether he's mentally fit, he having so despicably removed his immunity as captain. By getting in a brawl, he should be able to command any officer as a captain to take charge of that situation and abate it without resort to that type of violence. And if you had Port Authority, commissioned officers, authorized officers on board, all of that would have been averted. So in moving forward, we have to see that safety aspects and other aspects of the port management, including whatever new amendments would come into force, that would enable vessels carrying foreign flags, when they come in, they comply with certain regulations and standards. And we have some credential processing mechanism where we can vet the credentials to determine if those persons are fit and proper to hold the position they allege.
And that is a very, very good point there, Mr. Clouden, which I'm going to follow up with Mr. Joseph on. That has to do with crew. What kinds of background checks are done to ensure that crew members are in fact fit to serve as crew, whether it's on a party boat or whether it's on a cargo ship, a cruise ship, so that when that ship is in port, if issues like that emerge, that we have those things in place. Your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. And I must respond to my brother, Mr. Clouden. We are making the Ports Authority of a cause of this event. A fight on a boat is an isolated event. You can't plan for a fight. There's nothing we could have done to stop that. It is unfortunate that, as Mr. Clouden said, that the captain did not de-escalate the event, because the captain is Lord and Master. Notwithstanding, Mr. Clouden spoke extensively of the powers under the Cap 247, the GPA Act. But the license for this operation and the governing of that kind of operation is under Cap 249, which is the Powercraft Act, which is administered by the Director of Maritime Affairs, and Cap 303, which is the Grenada Shipping Act, which also gives force to the ISPS code SRO 4 of 2011. So the action taken by myself and other Ports Authority officers at the time was in keeping in those acts. We, notwithstanding the powers under Cap 247, in any legal matter, you choose the most appropriate legislation or the most appropriate forum. That's why we have in law forum shopping. Likewise, we choose the legislation for which the vessel is operating. That way, there's no legal gaps in terms of your actions. Notwithstanding, though, in terms of the captain and his competence and the crew and the competence, the flag is a body responsible, the flag state of the vessel, to endorse the qualifications of the master and his officers and crew. All a port state control can do is to look at the certificate and say, yes, it is authentic. You have to take what is provided by the flag state, unless you have clear grounds that the certificate holder or the certificate itself is fraudulent. And we have done that many times. So as I said, when the vessel came, one of the surveyors did an inspection in accordance with Cap 249 and 303, which really basically is an inspection of the certificates issued by the flag state. So the passenger safety certificate, the certificate of the master and crew, and we are satisfied for that size of vessel that the certificates were legitimate. They were not expired or anything. If, now that hindsight is 2020 vision, now that we see this thing occurred, we can say, okay, to the flag state, you need to have a review of the master's certificate, because as Mr. Cloughton rightly stated, the master is the master, he's Lord and Commander. This thing should not have ended up that way. But notwithstanding, you see, I like to be fair with these things. We cannot continue down the road of criminalization of seafarers. The International Maritime Organization has spoken about that many times, not because you have an incident in port, regardless how gruesome it may be. Seafarers are not normally criminals. In fact, to get a license, you have to have a clean criminal record. So we must not let one event make all seafarers criminals.
Okay. Mr. Clouden, anything else you wish to add?
Well, just to say to my good friend that I hadn't meant to ascribe blame on the Port Authority in the context of what has happened. What I'm saying is, with the plenitude of powers you have, you need to get the money, of course, to implement a lot of certain standards that have become internationally acceptable, that for one reason or another we cannot implement. So that, but when it comes to these foreign vessels coming to ply our waters as part of our national celebration and the like, carrying our passengers exclusively, there's certain protocols that they must follow. And you guys would have to beef up in it. But I'm not criticizing you and saying that you are Port Authorities in any way to be blamed. I'm saying that Port Authority needs now to be more proactive in the context of these type of crafts coming in to take our people on these tours and the like.
And the other question I have, and then we're going to get quickly to the end of the program here, has to do, because when I think of crew and captain on a ship, I think of them in the context of law enforcement, to ensure that, especially when you are treating with passengers, you're hosting passengers, that you are able to de-escalate issues that may emerge, especially on a party boat where people would be inebriated. And so I want to get your thoughts, Mr. Clouden and Mr. Joseph, on this. The role of captain and crew in the way that law enforcement swears an oath to protect and serve. So that they're held to a particular standard of service. Does the same apply in the case of captain and crew, Mr. Clouden?
Well, To be quite frank, remember these folks were on a frolic, and the maddened crowd, as we say. So that there's a certain levity, a certain freedom when you're on these pleasure cruises. Well, that's how it's called, pleasure cruise. But it is left to the ship administration, the agent of the ship, and of course the port authority to ensure that certain security mechanisms are in place, because you anticipate this type of conduct ultimately anyhow. If we haven't drinks, you become louder, you become more party oriented. I mean, what happened was very unfortunate indeed. And I think if you have better surveillance of these sort of pleasure crafts, then you may minimize such incidents. Yes.
Absolutely. Mr. Joseph, any thoughts on that question?
Well, I concur with Mr. Clouden. But again, as I say, you give people the benefit of the doubt. Somebody having a captain license on a passenger ship is expected to behave in a certain way. He's responsible. We have it in international law. We have it under SOLAS. On clause section 98, a captain has a responsibility to save life and limb. That is his responsibility, is a tacit responsibility. So when you see situations in the video, I don't want to prejudice the case,
outcome
as
of
it
the
were.
case.
Yes, but when
It's
you
now
see
sub judice, yes.
Yeah, when you see situations like this, because there is a thin line between trying to subdue an unruly passenger and kicking and cuffing somebody. I mean, that cannot be construed, not even by a reasonable man, to be trying to take charge of a situation. So yes, captains have to behave in a certain way, and you have a responsibility to save life and limb. A passenger on your vessel, and I say on the vessel because the ramp is an appendage of the vessel. It is part of the vessel. Ending up in the sea, it's outrageous. You have, in fact, when you have man overboard, it's a big deal on board a ship. And when you have situation alleged that your own crew have caused somebody to end up in the water, I mean, that is madness.
Mr. Clouden?
Well, I agree. As my friends say, I concur with him. It was a madness taking place there with captain and crew, contrary to all acceptable protocol. And this young man is lucky that he's alive. Maybe he could swim. He had to be pulled out of the water. And my friend is quite right. When you hear man overboard, I mean, I'm from a maritime family. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, all owners of vessels. I'm right here now, just going to a little sailing festival we have in Windward at home here in Carnival. So, man, when you hear man overboard, it's serious business. Sometimes you have to make a turn and come in and tack and throw a rope and all this sort of thing. If that person can't swim, well, crap or smoky pipe. And what is worse, I haven't heard anyone say that they check the life jackets of these crafts when they come in, especially when they come from these foreign places, to ensure that if you have 108 passengers and 10 crew, then you have 108 and 10 is 18 life jackets on board. Because there may come a time, you can never tell what may happen, could happen, where you have to tell everybody put on a life jacket. You do it in the aircraft sometimes. Get your seat belts and put on your life jacket. We heading for a crash landing. That's the reality of living. So I don't know if they checked all these things, but IMCO regulations, and my friend alluded to it, it must be in some of the subsidiary acts. There's quite a number of them you have, beginning with SRO 1986, SRO 988, 5291, 1192, 1495. So they've been upgrading the process of managing the port. But they have to be more proactive, and they have to find ways and means of raising money. I mean, they do it in dues and taxes, but they rarely, as my friend said, detain a boat for lack of paying their dues. It extends for some considerable time, but they have the power to arrest that boat for non-payment of dues. It may not be the desirable thing to do, but this is how you would have to generate income from within, my brother. to get the standard, increase the standard of the Port Authority to the extent that you have not only 2 of your boats, but maybe 5 carrying ships in and out. And that's where you make your money. You need a more economic management. That's only my impression of things, because I had some relationship with the port when I was ambassador to IMCO.
Absolutely. So we want to get to the end of the program now. Mr. Joseph, I would get to you for some closing comments. And obviously, this matter is now an official legal matter. Some of the defendants in this case have been charged. Of course, in our system, there is a presumption of innocence until proven otherwise. And so we are now allowing justice to take its course. But I think it's also important for us to make the point that we not engage in acts of xenophobia. We've been hearing Trinis this, people are going to boycott curry, they're going to boycott roti, all of this. We do have a vast Grenadian community in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago is one of our closest trading partners as well. After Hurricane Ivan, it was the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago who came to Grenada's aid by way of the late, great Patrick Manning, who was a prime minister at the time. He was the first regional leader to come to Grenada's aid during that time. It was Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force personnel who were on the ground engaging in peacekeeping and aid distribution activities. So I want us to just be very level-headed with our outrage. The outrage is understood. Martin Luther King says that that outrage tends to be the voice of the voiceless, or something to that effect. I think I'm butchering the quote now, but I want us to let level heads prevail at this time. So, Mr. Joseph, some closing comments from you.
Yeah, but before I give my closing comments, I want to just close out something that Mr. Clouden mentioned. In terms of our safety inspection prior to licensing, we check all life-saving and firefighting equipment on board. Make sure that what the certificate says they have. So that was done. In terms of an investigation, casualty investigation, the minister under Cap 303 can cause an investigation. It is not the port to cause an investigation. The minister responsible for shipping, who happens to be our prime minister, can cause an investigation. And the officers of the Ports Authority, who are duly qualified, will conduct that investigation once the minister has caused it. Right. So that I just wanted to put these 2 matters to rest. My closing comments germanes to the following. The outcry of this event, I just hope in our consciousness is not because of a celebrity. As I said it should be the same outcry if it's Dummy James from the back of Bahu. These incidents are not reasonable, and they should be condemned. In terms of legislation, and I'm happy that Mr. Clouden understands that Grenada needs to be a maritime nation. We cannot operate an open registry without implementing all of the mandatory IMO legislation, some of which we have signed, but it is not in our local law, so we cannot enforce it. Grenada was subject to an audit, the IMO member state audit scheme in 2018. And we had 20 findings and 2 observations, which has to be cleared within a 7-year period. And I think we are moving twice as fast in half the opposite direction in clearing them. Because once we implement a strategy and move forward with the clearance of these findings, we are going to be in a better place to be an open registry. No ship owner of substance is going to flag his vessel in Grenada, and everywhere the vessel goes, it's subject to inspection because we are on a black list or a gray list. So it is important that the powers that be understand that maritime safety, maritime administration is grounded by adequate regulations. So I hope this new administration will put this on the front burner, because we talk about the blue economy. We cannot in no way take advantage of the blue economy with a weak maritime infrastructure. We need the enabling environment and the enabling institutions. to so do. So on that matter, as I say, it is an unfortunate incident. I do hope that nothing like that ever happens again. We also at the Ports Authority cannot and will not ban a vessel because of an isolated incident. When a fight happens at Fantasia, you don't shut down Fantasia. If a fight happens at Junction, you don't close down Junction. You deal with the issue. So the Ports Authority is a facilitator of trade. If a vessel presents itself, it has the equipment and stuff to be licensed, we will license it. It is for the patrons to go on the vessel, and in that respect, party boat activities will only increase because the demand is there and the supply is restricted. We only have about 3 or 4 locally owned party boats. There's one coming on stream that might take up some of the slack, but the fact is, cruising during Carnival time is a feature that was going to remain. We have to get to that point and understand if you don't provide the service, somebody else will. It's clear economics, supply and demand.
All right. Supply and demand, the economics. And Mr. Clouden, some final thoughts from you.
I think my friend has touched on most of the areas that we share general concern on with respect to the Maritime Administration. What I would really like to see, though, as he has indicated, that Grenada has an international shipping registry. And from that would flow all sorts of things. But you have to have international compliance, so you're quite right. And once we get to that stage, then, of course, I think our ports and harbors with all the requirements. Look, going up the Caribou, some of these rocks, you're mandated to put navigational lights and, Moboya, Jacadam has one. There are 2 other rocks outside west of St. Patrick's, Isle of Roan. If you overrun in the night, you're running straight onto Isle of Roan, you know. Especially on a dark night. When I go sailing, man, sometimes you say, oh my goodness, you're right on top of Isle of Roan. So you need the areas and it costs money. And so we have to find innovative ways of enforcement, all kinds of things. Dues collection, charges, dockage, licensing, all those areas. I would like to see us move forward with greater alacrity and greater determination and commitment so we succeed as a nation. You're right. We can stop boats from coming. Once they comply with certain requirements as laid down by the Port Authority in whatever sector, we admit them. I'm all for that, Well, that's about all I wish to say this evening, and to thank you, Dr. Bubb, for having me on such an enlightening subject. You see, I've stayed away from commenting on other aspects of the brawl.
Correct. And I do understand as someone who, when I at least worked in Grenada, I do understand the functions of the court and the role of how we as media ought to be reporting on these issues. There is a responsibility there that needs to be taken seriously. So certainly I want to thank you for bringing your expertise and lending your expertise to this issue because it's an important issue.
Thank you, Dr. Bubb.
Absolutely. And do enjoy the regatta. Hopefully next time you can invite me to Carriacou.
Yes, I most certainly would.
Even though I'm not Kakabawi for Kakabawi, but I consider myself an honorary kayak as I have.
That's wonderful. You're always welcome, Dr. Bubb.
Absolutely.
Welcome. Oh.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners,
we may give you honorary citizenship. You can never tell.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Clouden, for that.
Welcome,
okay, Mr. Anselm Clouden, a maritime attorney who's bringing his expertise in this area, and Mr. Lazarus Joseph, who is the head of the Marine Department, and they were able to shed some light in a dispassionate and objective manner with respect to the events that unfolded at the port involving Grenadian world champion Anderson Peters. Of course, the matter is now before the court, so it's sub judice, and so we are going to be very responsible with respect to how we report on this issue, except to say that this involves maritime administration. And so that is why we had these two gentlemen here. So we want to thank you again. And viewers and listeners, we want to thank you for your participation. We want to thank our earlier panelists for unpacking and attempting to make sense of the conclusion of Spice Mass 2022, with the hope that the product can only continue to improve, and that people would also take on board some of the constructive criticisms, some of the negative criticisms, and some of the positive feedback as well that has been made with respect to Spice Mass 2022. So on behalf of the producers of the Bubb Report, we wish to thank you again for your participation this week, and we will be seeing you next week. Bye-bye.